Okay. Let me get my sound going here.
There we go. Now, can you hear me? Oh, now I can't hear you. Are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Sorry about that.
No, this was good. Yeah, sorry, I was running back to work. Just because
you're in work now?
Well, at the office, just because there's better Wi-Fi and also just a nicer area to live stream from.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So anyway, some people might be joining us actually on Zoom, but most people are usually on Facebook. So sure. I just went around and, reminded people that it was there. Sometimes they're slow to get on. So, I'll mention that this is supported through a grant from Beiersdorf, and this is the second in the series, and then I'll throw it to you so you can introduce yourself as far as your background, and you're a first member, you're a student, you're deep into research, and and then just take it from there, and hopefully as they get on we'll start branching out. But as we go live, I'll be popping in and out of Facebook.
Okay. Sure.
Oh, here's Nicholas. That's good. He's been a big help. Hey, Nicholas. Thanks for joining.
Hello. Would it be worth it that I run through a little bit of like a family history to start off with?
Oh, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, because that's kind of where I thought I'd launch it.
Yeah. Hi, Nicholas. How are you?
Good, you?
We're just getting prepared to go live, so I'm just touching base with Stefanos. And is that how you say your name?
Yeah, Stefanos, you got it.
Stefanos, and how do you say your last name?
Koutsoukos.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought I better check.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, so I'll be popping back and forth to Facebook and reading people's questions and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you can talk about how your family and how that whole story with the
right
and everything, like that's huge.
Sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a great background to have.
Perfect.
But so in about a minute, I'll probably start getting ready for live, because it always takes a minute or two.
Sure, sounds good. And so clearly, like, I'm not on live, so I can be seeing questions, but if you'll be the one moderating.
I'll be the one posing them to you, because you won't see them.
Perfect.
So I'm going to go over, and Nicholas, don't be shy. Please ask questions too. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth to Facebook to try to pick up people's questions, but I'd be happy if you want to jump in too. So, but here, let me try to go live here. Okie dokie. Everything always, I feel like they change things from one week to the next, but here I'm starting. Okay. I'm going to go live. See, it might take a minute or two. People tend to see us before we see them, so.
Yeah, it does say live on Facebook.
Okay. It's live now. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Wassel from the Foundation for Ichthyosis and Related Skin Types. Today we have, oh my goodness, Stefanos Koutsoukos. He's an affected adult, and he has a couple people in his family with ichthyosis as well. This session is Ichthyosis and Careers, along with mentorship, and it's put on through support from a grant from Beiersdorf. So we are so grateful for their support through this process. And this is a second in a series of these talks, and they're always available on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Probably by tomorrow morning it will be up, but you can always go back and take a look at them. But this is live currently on Facebook, and we have a couple people joining us within the Zoom call, but I just wanted to clear up a few things. I know a lot of you are on Facebook Live with us, which is great. And, Stefanos has a fair amount to speak about tonight, but we also want this to be very informal in terms of questions and answers. And please feel free to post questions in the Facebook chat. If you're on Zoom, you can post questions in there as well. So without further ado, I want to pass it off to Stefanos, and I'm thrilled to have him here. He's a smart guy. He's been involved in FIRST, and he's going to give you some background and on mentorship and careers. So Stefanos, thanks again, and here you go.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. So my name, as Chris mentioned, is Stefanos, and I am an affected adult with ichthyosis, specifically ASPRV1 or ichthyosis caused by ASPRV1. And in tonight's kind of like theme being careers, I thought I'd start with a little bit of my family's history with ichthyosis, which actually doesn't start necessarily with me, but my mom. So it was, a few decades ago, I should say, or about 5, that my mom was born with ichthyosis. She was the third of 4 children. And of course, the first 2, neither, or the last had ichthyosis. So it was only her that was affected. And of course, neither of my maternal grandparents were affected, which made it so that she was just the only one that ended up having ichthyosis. So from there, we can fast forward to just about when I was born, or at least when my mom was thinking about having children, and her being told sometimes by genetic counselors back then that there was a very low probability that she would pass on her ichthyosis to her children, or that her children would inherit our specific type. That hypothesis was quickly disproven with me. And of course, me having been born first, and then my younger brother coming around later, also with ichthyosis. So with that context, I'll fast forward all the way to, I guess, the beginning of when I went to school or graduated high school and went out to the University of Maryland. And I was always fascinated by our skin condition, but not really in the context of figuring out exactly what's happening until I started studying biochemistry at the University of Maryland. And it was then that I started digging a little bit more into the disease, the different subtypes, and of course was then, I guess I could say, connected to FIRST, of course, having known about them, but not really engaging much before, and learning about Dr. Keith Schote's gene discovery project at Yale. And so that's what sent myself, and of course my family, on a journey to figuring out exactly what our specific type of ichthyosis was. And that was back in about 2016 that myself, my mother and a brother, as well as maternal grandparents and an unaffected sibling of my mom, all sent over our saliva samples to Dr. Schote and his group. And it was just actually about a year ago, almost to the date, that he published his paper describing our specific subtype, a new subtype, that being ichthyosis caused by variants in ASPRV1. By the way, shout out, if anybody out there knows that they are also featured in that paper, please get in contact with me. I'd love to talk with you. But we can revisit, of course, a little bit of the theme of the night, which is careers. So that journey of trying to figure out exactly what type of ichthyosis we had took me down the path of just in general rare diseases. Many of us that do in fact have ichthyosis, actually I would say almost every subtype is classified, maybe besides vulgaris, is classified as a rare disease. Now, in fact, even vulgaris, like on a genetic basis, and the different variants that might cause it also could be considered rare. And so that sent me down a path that is kind of rare disease in general, rare disease related research. And so I was fortunate enough to, of course, as I mentioned, go to the University of Maryland, which is just about a 20-minute drive to the National Institutes of Health, where there is in fact a lot of rare disease research going on. It's kind of like, you might say, the mecca of biomedical research in the country, especially in the context of COVID, at least has it been in the last year. but especially rare diseases. Now, in fact, I hate to keep jumping back and forth, but my mom back in the day, also being from this area, would in fact come to the NIH and be seen by physicians that were specialists in ichthyosis at the time. And so I had that opportunity to join the group that I am still in now and study not ichthyosis, but a different type of rare disease called basically in the umbrella of inborn errors of metabolism. And so that kind of takes us just about to where I am today. I'm actually finishing up this part of my, I guess you could say, my fellowship, my early career, and I'll be heading out to Colorado to join a graduate program in medical genetics, hoping to continue to study rare diseases, and in fact, hopefully with an emphasis on inherited skin conditions, many of us here tonight being affected by. And I'd love to continue to talk about a little bit of some ideas or some ways that I was able to tangent my career path specific to ichthyosis, but we can maybe get into that in a little bit. I'm not sure if there are any questions that anybody has yet.
They're all still just joining us.
Oh, okay,
So,
sure.
yeah.
I could, I'm happy to repeat or go back and cover anything again.
Well, when you were talking about the type of ichthyosis that Yale discovered,
Mhm.
did that change anything with how you were treating your skin, or was it just was able to enlighten you as to the specific gene?
Sure. Yeah, I would say like tangibly my day to day from, let's say, before and after the paper was published is just about the same, honestly. I always like to preface this, of course, we know ichthyosis is a spectrum. The many types can be more severe or less severe. ASPRV1, at least in the context that I have it, is, I would say, like well managed, which I'm very lucky for, of course. The creams and lotions that I was using before this gene was discovered are basically what I'm using now, with maybe Dr. Show did mention a couple different agents that I already was using that seemed to help. So I thought I'd just use those more. That actually just being urea lotion, like 40-50% urea. And then of course, as many people here use either Cetaphil or Aquaphor, just like a general base, and then as well as some type of alpha hydroxy acid lotion, like lactic acid lotion. So the management really didn't change too much, but of course, what now, like the power that we have with even just a gene is immense for what I want to see be the future of treatments. I'll say this, like before maybe we if there are any questions about this, but the same creams and lotions my mom was using or was given at the NIH by the NIH 50 years ago in the 60s and 70s are in fact what I'm basically using today. So there hasn't been much difference, or I guess you could even say progress in management. It works well, but I think we could figure out ways for our management in many different subtypes to work better.
Now, Stefanos, when you had, obviously you were born with a rare disease, is that what led you towards your career path?
Yeah, definitely. So it was kind of like there was a serendipity between me becoming involved in rare disease advocacy more on like a policy level. So of course, as you guys are aware, Maryland is also right next to Washington, D.C. And so there is a part of, I guess, the story where I worked with a rare disease policy organization called the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. And they bring advocates for many different rare diseases to Capitol Hill every year to advocate for rare disease related legislation. For example, like the 21st Century Cures Act, or like newborn screening legislation, pediatric, like different incentives that the FDA might give to a sponsor that's developing a treatment. Those are all bills and legislation that this policy organization would be interesting in lobbying for, kind of, but really like empowering patients to go to their senators and representatives on the federal and state level and tell them that these are important issues to them. So getting involved in that, and then of course also coming from a background of just in general, like biology and biochemistry, those together, and of course a desire to learn a little bit more about our rare disease, and also a lot of what is now being, I guess, considered um, genetic medicine, excuse me, that all those together kind of led me on that path to want to continue studying rare diseases specifically. And when I say study, I mean figure out exactly what's going on in the person or sometimes in the animal, and then figure out different ways on, in my case, on a genetic basis to be able to try to fix those problems.
So you think your background and your desire to do that has really driven you to where you are today? I mean, you're heading out to get your PhD, correct?
Right. Yeah, and having
Um,
like just having ichthyosis itself, no doubt, was I think the foundational like inspiration to continue down the path of studying rare diseases. Um, I really think like I probably wouldn't. I don't know. Like you never know where you'd be otherwise, but it's pretty pivotal, a pivotal part of the story.
and so when you head out, well, you actually have a fair amount of work experience already, right? And then at some point you decided to pursue your PhD. What's your ultimate end game here?
Sure. So, yeah, the fellowship at the NIH lasted about 2 years, and it's kind of like you might say like a stepping stone into a graduate program. And so, of course, I'll be heading out to Colorado, and um, honestly, I'll say this: like PhD programs can last a long time depending on how your research goes, and some luck, some however the research just happens to work out. So if I can imagine that would be maybe 5 to 6 years from when I head out there. After that, there are some different paths that many people that you could go down as like having as a PhD researcher. One of those being kind of a like classic academic and going for a postdoc, and then which is basically kind of like a kind of second PhD, but in the sense that you're studying something a little bit different. And then you could become an investigator, very much like, oh, we're very much familiar with Dr. Show himself being a primary investigator. That's one option. Some other paths down that road could be going into industry and working for a sponsor of a product, such as many of us are familiar with Crystal Biotech and some of their genetic medicines for Archie. Um, that's another way, or another option, or another path is going out and starting your own company. And depending on, again, on what kind of research you probably focused on in your PhD. So there's not necessarily a set path. I'm so very much trying to figure out exactly what I would want to do. I do have 6 years to think about it, so it's a long time. But if I had to like kind of decide soon, it would probably be work on inherited skin conditions, of course, specifically ichthyosis, and then others, on a basis of figuring out how can we get away from using so much creams and lotions for management.
Now, like I said, you have the background of your family. You had the gene was discovered. Obviously, you're a driven young man. Who in your life really has helped you in terms of shaping you who you are, or you relied on them for advice because they were there ahead of you? You know, the mentorship piece of this.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, immediately, just from like a similar background, I would say my father, who also went down a similar path, not in the biochemistry aspect, but but going to get his PhD. And that's no doubt like kind of inspiration, and just seeing like his career path, also was able to figure out a little bit easier what I'd want to do. But with that being said, the mentors I've had here at the NIH are no doubt really pivotal in me advancing to that next part, I guess you could say, with me going out to PhD. And they no doubt helped me learn just research in general, learn more about rare diseases, how to think about rare diseases, think about the mechanisms, think about like patient care and management, and how you could better treat how you could better treat what is now the standard of care. So in our context, thinking about like how could you treat ichthyosis better. So the mentors I've had here at the NIH have no doubt been pivotal in that. And then also just the rare disease community in general. I'm sure we can all relate to like how inspiring seeing other people in our community that have similar do have similar diseases as us move in different ways. And in fact, I can mention like one of my best friends who has a disease called NF2, neurofibromatosis. He has started, in fact, a company that's working to not only cure his rare disease, but many others that are, in fact, a very low incidence, basically rare diseases that might be less than 100 people in the entire US. In fact, ASPRV1 is one of those, at least as it is documented by the paper.
And yeah, you mentioned the other day, what was it, like 13 people in the United States, or
Yeah,
that's who we know of
right.
today?
In the paper, I think so. The three of us, of course, are part of that 13. So there are probably 10 more. So again, if you're listening, reach out.
And you, I know you just spoke about your, the mentors in your most recent work history, but if you take it back, because some of our, Lauren Howell's on the call here today. She's a high school student. I believe she's graduating this upcoming year. Congrats, Lauren. Um, Back into high school, before
Mhm.
you actually, I guess maybe you always had a science bent to you, but if you take it back there, can you
Mhm.
think of mentors or people you looked up to that provided you some good advice to move forward?
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. That's like a major part of, as you said, like me getting into science, enjoying it. It's actually, I would say like as far back as sixth grade is when I really figured out that I just enjoyed science. And then throughout high school, there's no doubt just teachers that, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like I had no clue back in high school what I wanted to even major in college or really what I'd study. I knew it would be some type of science, but outside of that, didn't know much more. So the um, the teachers that I had have no doubt, or no doubt back then, I really laid the foundation for me to be able to pursue that my studies in college. But there were just a couple like standouts that were always that just I think a lot of people can relate in terms of having those teachers that just inspire you and go a little bit above and beyond of what normal teachers would normally do. Um, but yeah, again, I'll say it again, like it wasn't necessarily that I exactly knew what type of science I'd want to go into even back then.
So you kind of have to leave the door open to adapt and change as you
Right.
proceed through.
Absolutely.
And I would think science changes so often, probably at the start of your career, things will look very different at the end.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, yeah, I'm sure like many of us have, of course, have heard of like CRISPR, and that was only discovered, I mean, that paper was only published back in 2012, 2013, and that's kind of revolutionized a lot of what is becoming genetic medicine. So there's no doubt like every new major discovery kind of shifts the field and changes it. But that's okay. Like that's great. Like to be able to be open, as you said, to adapt to those changes.
Well, it's interesting because CRISPR, we actually got a call today from one of our members asking if there's
Oh,
any any CRISPR updates for ichthyosis. And
interesting.
um, yeah, I mean, there are a fair number of people in our membership that are very interested in research. And and it's almost hard to keep up with, the changes in research. So it's really important. I mean, actually, it's kind of nice to have you as an inside track, someone that has ichthyosis that's going down that path. But we do, obviously, our medical and scientific advisory board is so knowledgeable, and they share with us all of the research that they're doing. And but it is important for the communication to go both ways so that we know what's going on, so we can prepare our members for those that are interested.
Hmm.
And there's also a lot of education for our members too, because research in ichthyosis, I mean, it was just a couple of years ago, we really didn't have clinical trials to offer our members. And all of
Mhm.
a sudden, it really seems to be picking up. So I know you and I spoke the other day about educating our members on how the whole process works. So, for our listeners here, we definitely want to have some more talks about that because it's so important and we're all learning. We really are. So,
Mhm.
um, but I see somebody posted. Oh no, that was Lauren.
I
Lauren
couldn't
was just
agree
saying that.
more. I mean, yeah, it is changing fast, and I love the like enthusiasm of the community to learn exactly what's going on. And you do hear a lot about CRISPR because it's working in other rare diseases, especially some even that are not so rare. Um, but I will say, like as you and I have spoken about, like I think there is a little bit of a lag of these new medicines reaching inherited skin conditions, especially of course ichthyosis being a major one of them. But I really hope that does change soon. I will say, like, I'm working with an organization called ASGCT, which is the American Society for Gene and Cell Therapy, and where I'm pushing to create some educational materials for um, the Crystal Biotech's engineered HSV1 capsid and their transgene. So I'm hoping that would give members a good idea, a little bit of a better idea, maybe, of what exactly genetic medicine is and therapy is, and could learn a little bit more about exactly what is that new type of technology.
Yeah, there's like you said, I think people obviously have their own concoctions of what they use on a daily basis.
Mhm.
There's other people that really, really want to stop doing that altogether and just go for the cure. So it's a
Yeah,
huge mix of people and expectations. So we just want to be able to present information as it becomes available. So that's, we'll continue to do that. Um, Now, let me just double check over here. I was just going back and forth. Let's see. Somebody posted a question. Um, Sorry, they posted a question about another topic. Sorry, I got myself tied up there. Um, so anyway, now when you head out I know you spoke something the other day about Dr. Dennis Roop out
mhm,
in Colorado where you're headed.
mhm.
And he's doing research as well. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, he of course, no doubt a pioneer in the field. He's leading some efforts, especially in EB, epidermolysis bullosa. I think those have been his most current efforts. But then you also mentioned Adam and his family. You said his brother, right? Working with him
Yeah,
potentially?
Well, first of all, Adam's skin cells are part of his research. Adam has
Right.
ichthyosis, and his brother was headed out there, I think, to work there for the summer too. At least that's what I heard way back when. So,
Sure. Well, that's awesome,
um,
and that's exactly what I'd wanna jump right into if I, have the opportunity to work with him. And hey, I mean, maybe even try to convince him to bring some of my cells over to his lab. In fact, of which I'm sure many of us have had many skin biopsies, in our time here. But this is of course outside of Dr. Schultz's lab, but I was able to get skin biopsies and have fibroblasts grown of myself, my affected brother, mom, and dad. And so work on some experiments that I have planned with Dennis Roop. I'm hoping.
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So I know you keep mentioning Dr. Choate. I just wanted to talk about Dr. Choate because he heads up the ichthyosis registry at Yale, in case anyone isn't familiar with that. So if someone needed a genetic test, we have it on our website. You can type in the search bar at the top, registry, and it'll bring you information how to contact his office to get a swab kit sent out to you or someone in your family, and to try to get a part of the ichthyosis registry because that's so important to research as well. If anybody has any questions regarding that, they certainly can reach out to me and I'll get you the information. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood what you were mentioning with
Sure.
Dr. Cho. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years. Wow. So hopefully by then I'll probably be done with my PhD. I think I actually only give you like 7 or 8, so I guess I'll have to be.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, if I don't want to. I always want to keep my claims and aspirations at some attainable level. But in 10 years, as it relates to what I want to work on with our own disease, my own disease, I do want to see it. I want to see it cured. Even with cure being such a, it can be a strong word, and I think, but I still think in the rare disease community in general, I think it's something that we should all aspire to. And even if we don't get there all the way, if we get something better than what we currently have, I think that's just as much of a win. And so the work that I've been doing outside with my friend Ono, that I mentioned before, another great mentor that I've had, I'm really hoping could, in fact, one day become something better. So it's better than the current standard. So maybe I won't be, maybe I'll never, not to use a double negative, but maybe I'll never not have to put on cream, every day, but maybe like every other day, every week, who knows? But that's something that I'd like to see come to fruition.
I think what's helped this whole research process too, I feel like I said before, we didn't have these clinical trials available to our community before.
Hmm.
Now all of a sudden we are. The FDA, I guess, I really feel like rare disease is almost like a buzzword.
Hmm.
They've asked first to come and to a listening session to set up so, people at the NIH can understand what ichthyosis is to our community. We're going to have people that are affected with ichthyosis, people that are parenting children with ichthyosis, speaking to the disease and the impact on their daily lives. So
Hmm.
that is a huge opportunity for first and for our community. So I think we're hitting it at a really good time, and
Hmm.
the future, there seems to be opportunity there. So I'm glad we have people like you out there researching it.
Yeah, well,
Um,
thanks. I couldn't agree more. This is the perfect time to get in front of the FDA and say, like, hey, we're here. We're a patient organization and we're a group of rare disease patients. Um, it's because, I mean, especially as you mentioned, with all these clinical trials coming about. And I think, of course, I'd love to see more, but it's good for the FDA to know, we're out there.
and like you mentioned, when you worked for the Every Life Foundation, I mean, as as an organization, we're one of our obviously part of our mission is to advocate for our members,
Hmm.
advocate in front of the FDA, advocate in at Capitol Hill, which we've done many years. And like you said, all those we signed on to many of those bills that you had mentioned earlier. The 21st Century Cures Act, I think that
Hmm.
was what it was called.
Hmm.
So and also I feel like as a community, ichthyosis is small, right? It's rare, but when we
Hmm.
combine with a coalition of skin diseases, we become bigger and our voice gets stronger. So it's a whole advocacy, as you mentioned, is very much key to this whole process. Um,
No doubt about it. It's really, we can go all the way back to Nord and the Orphan Drug Act that really paved the way for, I think, where we are today in getting rare disease products, you could say rare disease medicines approved and to patients. I there's some skeptics that will say like, oh, like it didn't actually really do much because look, like all these approvals are happening within the last 10 years, even though this legislation was passed back in 1983. But there's no doubt that there's kind of a convergence of not only the drug act, I'm sorry, the Orphan Drug Act itself, but also the technology. For example, gene therapy has really just exploded in the last 10 years. But that underlying foundation of legislation has allowed it to be successful for many rare diseases. There are now incentives that make it so that even a rare disease like progeria, which I think does in fact have less than 100 patients in the US, just had a drug approved that has shown great clinical outcome improvement. Um, so it's possible, there's no doubt. And the pieces are there. And I think it's like up to us to, as an organization, as a patient community, to put them all together and lead that better future for other patients, for us and other patients living with ichthyosis.
So we can see how it all comes together, how we all play a part in it.
Mhm.
And like I said, we even as far as Beiersdorf, they're helping to sponsor this call right here. They believe in our mission and trying to help each and every one of you. So we do have, like I said, this is a second in a series of sessions that Beiersdorf has helped with. Um, if you go on to our news and events on our website, you'll see the next two. And then after that, especially once we're in person with um, our patient support forums, which we're planning to having 3 patient support forums this fall. One in Washington State, one in Milwaukee, and one in Delaware. They're the 1 day sessions. And then, of course, we have our June 24th to the 26th, 2022 national conference, and we'll be back in person, and Beiersdorf will be there as well, as along with a lot of research going on, which happens every time. So, stay tuned with all that. Every announcement comes through on social media, on our e-news. We try to get it out there in front of everybody so that you have the opportunity to attend. Um, but let me just see if there was, here's a question here. How can
Yeah,
college students get involved in rare skin diseases and genetic research?
yeah, that's a great question. And that's exactly kind of when I kind of got my start in both, really. Now, from the perspective of like being a patient, um, there are a lot of advocacy organizations that always love your help and your input. One of those being, in fact, the Every Life Foundation, and they are in just a couple months. I will actually maybe next month are having a virtual kind of Capitol Hill meetup, bringing rare disease patients virtually online to meet their reps and senators and representatives to discuss rare disease related research. You probably wouldn't find necessarily something that says ichthyosis explicitly or skin diseases explicitly, but very much related to what a lot of our missions would be. Now, of course, like genetic research, if you mean as like from the patient's perspective, of course, I think I was able to work with Dr. Schott and get an answer of what our skin disease is. But he's much more than just a diagnostic one that diagnoses. Like he is in fact working on different therapeutic modalities. And reaching out to him would be a great idea. But if you are interested in getting involved in research from the perspective of like, let's say like a scientist or somebody who wants to study disease and how it works, and then genetic medicines to be able to cure diseases, I would say like look at your university and see what they might offer. Look at the professors and see what kind of research they do. Ask them what they do. And depending on where you are, you might even have another like hospital center or something near you that would be interested in taking undergraduates to um, to help with research, or to, I guess, get involved more with research. And then, of course, I'll always say like the NIH is such an amazing place. It funds a lot of research. It does a lot of research here. If you're around the NIH, or of course even if you're not, they offer a summer internship program. They offer a post-bac fellow program, which is what I just finished, which is what I just did basically. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to answer questions and then tell you a little bit about my time here.
And Stefanos, you mentioned too that another organization, they did virtual meet your representative
Mhm.
meetings. There were several several first members that did that. I'm losing track of time. I think it was the fall, and they were
Okay.
all through Zoom. And like I said, we've done those in person for many, many years, but
Mhm.
we didn't miss a beat last year, and had people on Zoom, and it was very impactful.
Oh,
It
that's
actually
awesome.
made it somewhat more convenient for our members. They could do it without leaving the comfort of their home. So
Yeah, and with how well it's very hot in DC this time of year too, and like even in fall, so it's always good to avoid that.
Mhm. Yeah, so all this, research, advocacy,
Mhm.
getting involved at first, staying in touch with what's going on, it's all important. And you never know, even within our own community, and I'm sure a lot of you are obviously on our private Facebook groups, but reach out to people on there. We have, you'd be amazed at the backgrounds of our members. There could be something that you're interested in, and someone in our own community could connect you with somebody in terms of a mentor or someone with advice. So don't be shy about reaching out to the community. If they can't help you, maybe they can point you to somebody outside our community that could. So, and I also wanted to mention for our young adults out there, I know we've had difficulties trying to reach you because no one wants to be on Facebook in a certain age group. So this Thursday evening at 8 p.m., Nicholas, who's on the call with us tonight, he's going to be hosting an Instagram chat room at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And if you have an interest in joining that, I think all he needs is your Instagram handle. So he can connect with you that night, but it's going to be a real informal meetup because a lot of, everyone keeps saying with COVID, we've had very obviously actually no personal contact with people in terms of in person. So before these patient support forums in the fall, we're going to try to get some casual, informal meetups where it's not a presentation, it's not an interaction between two people. It's going to be whoever wants to join in and just converse with each other, get to know each other, ask questions, see if, maybe you're local and you guys can meet up because you live near each other. I mean, we're trying to maintain connections, create new ones. So if you have any interest in connecting, I think we put it at ages 18 to 20, oh no, 16 to 26. So just if you want to pass your Instagram handle to me, I'd be glad to get it to Nicholas so we can connect on Thursday evening. And again, it's this Thursday, July 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And if you know somebody that's not on this call, please share that information with them because we want it to be, I'm sure it's going to take time to build up. People would realize, okay, maybe every Thursday or once, one Thursday every month, just meet up with people. So trying to replicate some of the meetups that we have in person at the conference. So just wanted to give a shout out to that as well. Here's another question. Oh, okay. Okay, Lauren, I'll get your handle to, actually, Nicholas is in that chat. So Lauren, he has your handle there, your Instagram one. So that's great. Let me just pop over to Facebook to see if there's any other questions before we end tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, let me see, is that another one there? Oh, no. Okay. So anyway, I really appreciate your time and insight and your knowledge, Stefanos. You're a brilliant man, and we're glad to have you. Really thank you for your time, and we're going to continue to get you involved because we
Absolutely.
know where to find you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and anybody who has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yes, and like I said, if you need Stefanos or you need his contact information, just contact the office and we'll get it right to you. But I think that was it when I popped back over. If there's a couple more questions, Stefanos, I'll shoot them over to you after this call.